Hello everyone! Today we're going to talk about nuclear power plants. But first, we must understand how they work. Like most methods of power generation, a nuclear power plant ultimately turns a turbine, which generates electricity. Energy is created by firing a neutron into a stable uranium atom, which makes it really unstable and ultimately collapses into two different atoms. This process releases heat energy. Also, several neutrons are being fired off into other uranium atoms, which creates a chain reaction. Now let's get down to the actual steps. First, uranium fuel cells are loaded up into the reactor, where the chain reaction takes place. Then, water is pumped through the reactor, which heats it up to around 260 degrees Celsius. This water, however, does not boil, because the pressurizer maintains the water pressure. It then gets pumped into a heat exchanger, where the hot water turns another body of water into steam. Lastly, the steam goes through the turbine, turns it and generates electricity. Here's a diagram that summarizes how a nuclear power plant works. Now that we know how a nuclear power plant works, we can discuss its benefits and costs. First, we'll discuss the social aspects of a nuclear power plant. Location. Most nuclear power plants are situated alongside rivers or bodies of waters. Because generation of electricity also generates tons of heat, water is constantly needed for cooling purposes. Before the water re-enters the river, it is cooled down to its normal temperature, which deals minimum harm to the wildlife. We'll give that a +2. Health and safety in the workplace. Nuclear power are relatively safe, for there have been only 3 major accidents in the history of nuclear power during the 16,000 cumulative reactor years, and the risk of failure is still declining. We'll give that a +2. Light and noise pollution. Compared with other methods of generating power, such as wind turbines or burning fossil fuels, nuclear-powered stations generate a minimum amount of light and noise pollution. We'll give that a +3. Effects on recreational areas. Nuclear power plants needs a large land area beside a large body of water. That usually means clearing of forests, which has a negative effect on animal and plant life. We'll give that a -3.
Now we're going to discuss the economic factors of nuclear power plants. Operating costs. Operating costs are generally positive. Average non-fuel operation and maintenance costs for a nuclear power plant was 1.64 cents per kilowatt hour in 2014. We'll give that a +3. Now on to capital costs. Capital costs are usually very negative, with it being almost impossible to manufacture nuclear power plants and keep it cost effective. In 2002 and 2008, costs of building nuclear power plants rose from $2 billion and $4 billion per unit to $9 billion per unit, according to a 2009 UCS report. We'll give that a -5.
Life cycles.
Life cycles are generally positive as well as being cost effective. The U.S. fleet of nuclear power plants can run for another 50 or even 70 years before it is unusable, much more than the planned 40-year lifespan. We'll give that a +4. Now on to financial influence on the private sector. What this means is that it's just basically private influence. The The extremely high and rising costs to build a complete nuclear power plant is why nuclear power has failed to attract private sector financing. The Canadian nuclear industry consists of a mixture of private sector firms and public sector organizations at both the federal and provincial levels. This means that both private sector and governments are involved in nuclear energy. We'll give that a -2.
And lastly, we'll discuss the environmental aspects of a nuclear power plant. Impact of failure. In a nuclear power plant, there's always a backup system to limit the damage if something fails. 2 in 3 meltdowns would cause no death. Although averagely, a nuclear meltdown would kill 400 people. Death can be expected from being exposed to really high radiation. But such death would occur in only 2% of all reactor meltdowns. We'll give that a -1.
Management of waste. The amount of waste is very small relative to wastes produced by fossil fuel electricity generation. Nuclear wastes are not particularly hazardous or hard to manage compared to other toxic industrial wastes. The level of hazards of all nuclear waste, its radioactivity, diminishes with time. Each year, nuclear power generation facilities worldwide produce about 200,000 meters cubed of somewhat radioactive waste, and about 10,000 meters cubed of very radioactive waste. Let's give that a +2.
Availability of raw material. Unlike commonly perceived, uranium is relatively common. It can be found in rocks or even seawater. Currently, the world's reactors uses 68,000 tons of uranium every year. We'll give that a +2.
Possibility of failure. A risk analysis must be done for each power plant. In average, a meltdown should be expected every 20,000 reactor years. We'll give that a +3.
And now, let's add up all the benefits and costs of a nuclear power plant.
In the end, we get a +10. That's it for our video. I hope you learned more about nuclear energy.
If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button down below. We'll see you next time.